The founder of our movement, Ernest Holmes, believed in two pieces of foundational theology in terms of spiritual truth. Again, not religion, but spiritual truth. One of them was the power of love, and the other one was the power of freedom. And so when we think of love, we think of something that's open, expansive, warm, compassionate, ever-present, a power of deep, deep presence and belonging, as being optimism and ever growing, ever expanding, pure possibility and potential. And the other piece is freedom. And basically, Holmes, if you look at his writings are absolutely infused with it constantly. It's how we choose to live our lives. It's how we choose to come forward each and every day and to view whatever it is that we're going through in this existence. And basically, we can frame this quite simply in the power of choice. The power of choice. So imagine what I just laid out there, the idea of this expansive energy, and we join it together with choice. So I want to take that idea and put it on a shelf for just a moment, and I promise we'll circle back. So I was in a grocery store here in Chico recently, and the Halloween stuff has been out for a really long time. A lot of orange and black and a lot of jack-o'-lanterns and skeletons and all this stuff. In fact, the grocery stores are selling as much yard art as I think Lowe's is right now, mixed in with the green beans and stuff. So I've gotten kind of used to that, and I enjoy Halloween. I like the colors of it. I like the skeletons, and they kind of bring me joy, you know. And so I was walking around, and this one day, a couple weeks ago, out of the corner of my eye, on the top of some shelving where products were out, and this was on the end of an aisle, I caught some coloration. Just out of the corner of my eye, I caught some sort of a design. And without looking at it directly, I thought, oh my God, this, whatever it is about Christmas. You know, we're not even to Halloween yet, right? Okay. And so I looked at it, and it was very, very much branded as Christmas. It had, green and red and gold and white, and it had pine trees, and it had snow and probably a sleigh and a deer. So I don't know what it had, and I don't know what it was selling, but it was just definitely Christmas. And I took a moment to think about that, about Christmas, and especially this imagery that was used for Christmas. Now, being a minister, and especially working with a particular center for a long time, every single Christmas season as a minister, about a month before, you start getting yourself ready for, okay, what are going to be the special occasions? What are the talks going to be about? We're going to get into the metaphysical meaning of the coming of the Christ, and we get into the sacred feminine, the sacred masculine, and the wise ones and the camels, and we get into all of it, and so we're ready for that, and you have to make sure that the cookies are baked, and that you're going to do some special classes, and make sure the place is decorated and all that stuff. But for my money, one of my favorite aspects of the holiday season that is the most meaningful to me on a really personal level would go back to, for lack of a better term, the pagan ideas around Christmas, the earthen ideas, the very oldest of all of our ancestors. We think of earthen traditions, tribal traditions, we think of First Nations, native people. And the fact of the matter is, if you go far enough back in history, every single person on this planet has some direct relation to some native person and tribe and group somewhere. That's where we all started. That's where spirituality started. And so the Christmas branding that we have today, all of those images come from the northern latitudes, the very highest latitudes on this earth. Pine trees, snow, the North Pole, Santa Claus. I think there are some elves up there, not really sure, but anyway, they're in there somewhere, right? And so if we go back in time, if we play anthropologist for a moment, and we go back far enough in time, to our ancestors of the furthest northern regions, the wintertime was just overbearing. It was so heavy and so strong and so dark. And we know that in some areas there was literally darkness. And in other areas there was a lot of darkness. And what we know about our ancestors, anthropologically speaking, is that starvation was always just outside the door. So, if they did not preserve their protein well enough, then they may not make it. If they were not able to preserve, if they were gatherers at all, the berries, the grains, the leaves, any of that, if they could not preserve the contents of the stomachs of the caribou and things like that, if for some reason wolves got into their stores or the weather got into their stores or whatever. And so they also had, depending upon the region, they had domestication. You know, we know that some ancestors actually domesticated the caribou, some domesticated the dogs, obviously. There were other domestications, and so you had to worry about them, and you spent a lot of time just really hunkered down while the elements took over. And it was a dark time, not only literally, but metaphorically. In fact, I believe that the term we use now so much around spirituality, the dark night of the soul, comes from this place. Perpetual night. Perpetual darkness, perpetual heaviness. Okay? All right. Got you good and depressed, right? All right. Heading into the holiday season. That's not depressing enough. So Andy's going to depress you even more. All right. So this is what I find amazing. And of all the images and all the iconography and everything of the Christmas season, I'm going to pick out one thing today, and I want to talk about it. And I think it has a seminal power to it. So we don't know who this person was. This person has been lost to history. But they may be one of the most important people in terms of bringing forward a metaphysical, spiritual idea than maybe anybody else. So one day, somebody is in some sort of dwelling in the northern latitudes, and they're just really going through it. It's just really tough. And they get this idea somehow that they're going to go out and cut a branch off an evergreen. Because maybe they yearned for an evergreen. Maybe they missed an evergreen. Maybe they were in there in the glum and the doom, and they were thinking about the trees. They were thinking about the sun. They were thinking about something else. They say, oh my God, I could go out there. I could snag a branch off of a tree. So they went out there. It had to clear first of all, they had to get out, walk through 15 feet of snow or whatever it was to get there, and go out there and find the tree line and brush the snow and the ice off of that evergreen and get down. And they pulled out whatever knife they had or whatever, and they cut that branch. They cut that bough. They brought it into their dwelling, into the midst of that darkness, into the dim light of whether they were burning wood or they were burning oil. Probably most of them were burning oil. And they laid it there. And the children and everyone came around and probably almost started to cry. Yeah, the evergreen. Going to bring it into our home. Bring this, let's call it the evergreen consciousness. And to think, the power is housed right in what it's called evergreen. It's probably the guy who cut it. He's probably the guy who named it, right? Evergreen. Can you imagine that? The power that brings into that dark place. I was looking up while I was preparing for this about the meaning of evergreen. And the meaning of the evergreen is retaining its freshness and vitality, continually relevant and unlimited. So you're literally in the dark night of the soul. You're literally in this place of death and possible starvation and not making it, and you feel that intense weight on you, and something comes into your midst that represents continually relevant and unlimited. Now, metaphysically, what it means is nourishment, transformation, fertility, boundless wisdom. Everything being boundless, everything being more, everything being potential and possibility. And this idea that in your dwelling you think, I brought this evergreen in, and out there amongst all those evergreens, underneath the snow, underneath the ice, vitality, everything, it's out there. It's boundless. It's possible. It's potential. I read that in some northern latitude groups of people, the evergreen was actually seen as God and actually worshiped as God. And I get that because of this idea of being ever present, always there for us, nurturing us, feeding us. So we talked today about loving care. I talked about the definition of love. And imagine the person who was the first to harvest that. How challenging it was, probably, to turn towards love, to turn towards possibility, to turn towards potential. I know that in the way that I work in my day jobs, I work in counseling, I work in drug and alcohol counseling, addiction counseling. To be able to sit with someone sometimes, it's heart-rending to be in the presence of someone that is having such a hard time to turn towards possibility. This is what I've always been. This is what I've always done. I'm not even sure why someone is paying for me to be here. I've always been this way. I come from people like this, and this is the way it's going to be. And to grab a hold of something. So as a counselor, your job is to reach inside their lives in some way, shape, or form and pull out the evergreen, to pull out the possibility, pull out the potential, lay it down there. Let's talk about the evergreen. Let's talk about what it is to be vital. Let's talk about the possibility that there is a power that you can grab a hold of that can take you into a different direction. I spoke earlier today, I talked about the difference between religion and spirituality. Spirituality is this idea that there is a power. There is not a square inch on this planet where people do not believe in some form of higher power. Now, sometimes there have been politics that have come in and said, you can't do that. But the fact of the matter is the belief in something that is higher, that cares for us, a parent, if you will. That's why sometimes we've turned God into a man, a woman, whatever. Whatever floats your boat, whatever begins to become the evergreen for you to turn towards, that's fine. Who cares? But it's this idea that's there for us. It's a universal idea. I remember years ago, a book came out called The Secret Life of the Mind, and it talked about the author of the book said, when you start looking at thoughts and ideas that are absolutely, completely universal, then something has to be there. There has to be some sort of a truth in terms of where we've been drawn. In other words, I know that, for example, science and scholarly, the scholarly world has wondered about this idea of God. Is it superstition? Is it just hopeful thinking? Is it wishful thinking? Is it whatever it is? Because we somehow can't see it. We somehow can't lay our hands on it. But the fact that human beings, by the way, even there's evidence that Neanderthals actually believed in a higher power when they've excavated their grave sites. This is a universal type of knowledge that we have. I love the idea that we sometimes find in spirituality that one of the reasons we can't see God is because there's just all so much of it. It's all so much there that we can't see it. It's like a fish. You go up to a fish. Do you believe in water? I don't know. I've heard about water. I'm not really sure. Kind of a weird concept. It's ever present. I'm one with it. It's one with me, because it's so there, The root of the teaching of metaphysics is this idea that in order to take our lives in a different direction, and what New Thought metaphysics, if you look at the very foundation of it, we are less concerned with thick theology than we are for results. The idea of a life going in a better direction. The idea of surviving something and then thriving. The idea of healing. The idea of making tomorrow better than today and today better than yesterday. I believe that you can make a case, if you look at the great spiritual master teachers, I think you could put them into the realm of healers. We definitely know that about Jesus and the others. Pick up your bed and walk. They who are without sin cast the first stone. Let me hang out with the lepers. The healers who spent time within the essence of humanity to bring forward the evergreen of hope and faith that tomorrow can be better. And the hope and faith that tomorrow can be better because, by the way, the evergreen is here today, whether you can see it or not. So a few years ago, and it's, and I know it's very much in everybody's mind today, the fire in paradise. And so we all have our own stories, right? That the fire took place and then we all did what we did and we all grabbed a hold of what we had to grab a hold of, not just physically and materially, but also spiritually. And like everybody else, what happened for me was I had to go into this mode where I had to get Judy and I into some place to call home. And we had to rebuild our life. The center was gone, our homes were gone, the town was gone. And so like everybody else. So I went into this mode, I was working, and so for 3 or 4 weeks, we ended up staying with Judy's sister who lives out in Princeton. And God bless Judy's sister and brother-in-law because the middle of their living room is like the middle of their house, and the house kind of goes out from the living room. So the living room is like the hub of the whole house. So for 3 or 4 weeks, Judy's sister has a couple of people that at night would sit in that living room and just be sad sacks, just be in there, just glum, little cloud over us, trying to figure things out. And so I would work during the day, and then very often at night I was meeting with real estate people, insurance people. I was trying to figure out a stopgap home for ourselves. I was involved in a lot of financial stuff. There was a little bit of sinner stuff in paradise I had to deal with Julie. And so, so I would get over to where she was staying. And Judy's sister and brother-in-law, they have an amazing television package like most of us have. They have like 900 channels or something, And so for some reason, Judy and I, for a couple of about a week or so, we would sit down at night when I would finally get there, and we would kind of talk a little bit and maybe not talk a little bit. And we did, and for some reason there was the Hallmark Channel, all right? And so so the Hallmark Channel about that time, and I think that this is synchronicity, was running all of their sappiest romantic movies, all right? I mean, just the very sappiest. Now, I like chick flicks as much as anybody, but sometimes I think Hallmark station gets a little bit syrupy for me. But anyway, and so all of these movies have the same formula. A really attractive man meets a really attractive woman, adults. They come into a town. They either come into an area of the city that has lots of coffee shops and bookstores, or they come into a picturesque little town, and they meet, And both of them have come from a rough background. They've had a little breakup. They're in bad shape. They meet. Oh, God, do I care about this person? They become friends. Then they realize, oh, my God, I'm starting to feel something. So they run in different directions. And then they come back by the end of the movie. That's the formula. It works every time, right? Okay. I know the formula. And so I would sit there and watch these, and Judy would go, you want to change the channel? No. And so I sat through about a week of these. I mean, just nonstop. Just like, I mean, I have no idea if Hallmark made so many of these frickin' movies. And I just sat there. And, you know, those movies became my evergreen. They're exactly what I needed. They weren't talking to some insurance guy showing you your empty lot online. They weren't papers, they weren't money issues, they weren't insurance. It was just beautiful. And when I think about the definition of the evergreen, retaining its freshness and vitality, yeah. These cute little adults, they're all vital. They're fresh. They got good wardrobes on, right? Continually relevant, unlimited, yeah. They're always upwardly mobile. They're always highly educated. They drive Mercedes and stuff, right? Those movies were about transformation, definitely about fertility. You know, that was going on. You knew there was some fertileness there somewhere. A triumph of life over darkness. And I have to say that it was those Hallmark films that really got me through a big chunk of time after this fire. So the idea of living in choice. What is loving care? Loving care for ourselves is to actively live in optimistic choice, to live the life of the evergreen. All right. Thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. Okay. So,